Well, that was quite moving. Uh, he's a very charismatic speaker. And I'd like us now to go into breakout rooms to talk about this. I'm going to put a few questions in the chat right now. And I think, I believe the chat will stay with you in the breakout rooms. So I'm going to put four questions. You don't need to get through them all, just whichever ones you have time for, and there'll be a discussion leader in each of the six breakout rooms. So there's someone's asking me, the name of the speaker is James Talarico, I believe. And this is now let's just find out. I am not sure where his home church is. Um, Maybe someone can find out while we're in the breakout rooms. But I believe it's in Texas. So this is in Texas. Can you imagine giving a sermon like that in Texas? Takes some guts. Okay,
So,
Ken, would you put us in breakout rooms?
we need a couple more people made co-hosts so they
Oh,
can
yes, my
self-select.
apologies. I'll do that right now. Um, okay. So I think um,
If some groups don't have identified co-hosts, Mark, maybe the group can self-nominate someone to report back.
yeah, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Um, we're still getting a few folks back. Um, I guess what we should do is probably call upon um, different groups um, for a brief summary of what they talked about. And is anyone from Group One want to speak for Group One, or shall I?
Go for it.
Okay. I think that uh, several people emphasized the inclusion versus exclusion of his message, that was something that really he wanted to emphasize. What stood out to us was different, but certainly his delivery, his knowledge of different religious traditions, those those really stood out to us. I think we were stuck on what to do. um, I think many of us aren't Christians, so we don't necessarily have insider credibility as he does. So we were a bit stuck on what to do. Um, but I didn't stay for all of it. Maybe we could get someone to report from Group Two, please.
I think I have that role with the group. And so we had a nice conversation. We covered all four questions, although I took the liberty of changing some of the questions just a little bit. So
I know you would, Jeff.
yeah. So I think all of us kind of agreed that it was an excellent video with a lot of terrific points being made by someone within the fold. So, as a not only just a proclaimed Christian, but obviously someone in the seminary, he has some credibility in a way that people outside the Christian faith may not have to have that kind of conversation. So we were struck by that. Many of us were. Um, a couple people felt like that sermon, so to speak, could have been given in almost any Unitarian church because it drew from a very broad set of faith traditions, and that was an important part, even though it was very overtly Christian. The fact that he did not limit his remarks to the Christian context was, many of us felt like, was really, really important. Another contribution was that when he talked about what is a true Christian nation, what would a true Christian nation look like? children would be fed, people would be housed, et cetera, et cetera. That's what a true Christian nation would be. That resonated with people to hear that. And then in terms of a critique or stretch, if you will, I think, Mark, you alluded to this just now, which is there was a lot of what's the problem? Why do we have this problem? What's going on, but not very much remedy on how do we solve the problem other than speaking out. So that was one of the stretches. And then I think another stretch was the fact that it was very overtly Christian, and for people maybe on this call or others that might have been somewhat uncomfortable, but it was also empowering in a way. And I shared a personal reflection on that point because, I have a lot of family members that I feel like I'm more informed to have conversations with over Thanksgiving dinner. So that was group 2. And
Great,
I
thank
welcome
you.
any of the group 2 members to add something that I've omitted.
Please feel free to add something. I'll call on group 3 then.
I think either Kevin McCullough or John Gubbings would be better at explaining this than I was. I didn't get here in time to see the film, so. John, you want to chime in? Unmute.
Okay. Yeah, just basically, I think there was agreement that the message was so well put together that it'd be a useful way of sharing it, would be a useful way of addressing Christian nationalism. Someone raised the point that you could say we were making the Christian nationalists the other, but the way he put it together, I think, addressed what Christian nationalism, seeing Christian nationalism as the antithesis of Jesus's teachings isn't necessarily saying you're a bad person. It's just saying the truth, I think. And if you put it the way he is, and you're a Christian nationalist who is a Christian nationalist because that's what he's hearing at church, it gives him might give him something to think about, because it doesn't say you're a bad person if you're a Christian nationalist. It just said if you're a Christian nationalist, you're believing in the antithesis of Jesus's teachings, whether you have recognized that or not. That's about it for me. Anybody else?
Okay, thank you, John. How about from group 4? Anyone from?
I think that was Roy, but he got kicked out of the meeting on accident, and he's trying to rejoin right now. So maybe someone else from group 4 might want to share.
I'll take a stab at it, but people are going to disagree with me. So I'd like to. We did not agree on whether or not this was a good presentation. A couple of us didn't like it because it didn't say anything about Christian nationalism. Just set up a straw man. A couple of us really liked it because of of the message, underlying message, about the universal, a kind of universalist message. It was really cool. So we were divided.
Well, we're Unitarians, of course.
Yes, and there were we talked a little bit about what Christian nationalism is in terms of its dominionist roots, and I think John, was that you talking about the Leonard Leo and the Opus Dei influence on Christian nationalism, which is just a different kind of slant, but we didn't even get into that. I think it was an interesting group. Anybody want to talk about John? Or you had some things.
I think Brad really brought up some names. He studied this and how they are empowering themselves. It's more than just a theory or a group of ideas, like they're actually involved with our government, and I think what someone said, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Josh Hawley, Leonard Leo. I mean, there's some places you can go to get a more concrete idea of what this is all about. And I like that.
Great. Well, thank you. How about group 5?
I guess I'm the speaker for group 5. I think we focused especially on the main points, what we took to be main points of the lecture. Most of us seemed to be really impressed by James Tallarico, the way he spoke and the things that he said. Nobody had any special criticisms, except that 2 of us were just surprised. This is not so much a criticism as an expression of surprise, that it was so thoroughly theological. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised it was a sermon, but I hadn't expected it to be a sermon myself. And so in terms of political content, there wasn't much at all. Doesn't make it a bad sermon. It just means that, it was not what we were expecting. I know some people were impressed by the contrast that Tallarico drew between love of power and power of love, with, of course, power of love being stressed by Jesus and the early Christians. Somebody else mentioned that the central contrast was between Christian nationalism and the teachings of Jesus and of the early Christians. I think that's pretty much what I've got in my notes. If anybody else wants to add or correct anything, add to or correct anything I said from the group, that'd be great.
Well, I was in group 5. I don't have anything to add except that I just wanted to point out that the best thing I've heard all day is that the word God stands for the great outdoors. God,
That was funny.
That's my favorite thing that I got out of all this.
Okay, that's funny. Okay, how about a summary from group 6, and then we'll move on to the next session. Anyone from
Sure,
group
I
6?
could summarize group 6, and then maybe if anyone else wants to add anything. We did not have time to get through everybody addressing the questions, but even among those that spoke, we had some disagreements about the perspective. Our Canadian member did not see Christian nationalism as much of a threat in Canada. Some people really liked the sermon, and as one of you said, I think maybe Mark, it could be a Unitarian sermon based on the topics covered. But there was also the concern that this is just yet another perspective on Christianity. And how do we know this one is the right one versus the others? So we had a couple of atheists in the group who kind of were like, well, is this the right perspective, or is this just another perspective on it? And a couple of people said, well, how do we know which is right? It seems like everyone's trying to make it like there's one right way, but is there really one right way? Which I think is part of the sermon, that there isn't one right way. But so there were some mixed views, and as someone said before, there was the question about, well, someone said, well, I agree it's a problem, but how do we solve it? I'm at a loss for how to solve it. So yeah, that solutions part, really, he didn't have a lot of time to get to in the sermon. And that's a part I think many of us felt like we'd like to discuss more.
Yeah. Well, I think it's certainly fair to say that, who has the right to speak for Christianity is very much disputed. And if you look at the early history of Christianity, there were dozens of very, very distinct belief systems, all claiming Jesus as their figurehead. It's very hard to. And so let's move into the next part of the session. So Ken, you might, I think you're recording. Is that right, Ken?
Yeah, I started recording right before the recaps started.
Okay, so we're going to consider a few more sort of less opinionated, more factual questions, or at least questions which we think are more factual rather than values. So I want to start by looking at one of the claims that, you often hear from Christian nationalists or dominionists who are not quite the same, but almost the same group of people, who are saying that the United States was founded as a Christian nation, and they are trying to restore. They see themselves as trying to restore. And of course, by Christian, they mean Protestant Christian, because Catholics were not welcome in polite society in this country for a long time. So is that true? What some of you know a good deal about American history. Is that true? And if not, what's the reason for that?
You know, the
Probably
Unitarian
best, I
Republic.
think I see a hand from Steve and from Nikki, but probably best if you use the react button at the bottom of your screen. So let's start with Steve and then go to Nikki, and then please use your react button. Okay, Steve?
Okay, this is a discussion I've had many times over the years and sometimes with students. I'm newly retired professor. And I usually ask my students how many times they think that God or Christianity was mentioned in the text of the Constitution. And some of them are surprised that the answer is 0. And occasionally the Treaty of Tripoli in 1795 comes up, and it says explicitly that the U.S. is not a Christian nation. Those are meant to be arguments that there isn't any sound historical basis. I know there's so much more to the question than that, but it's a good way to sort of put the pro-Christian nation side on the defensive.
Well, thank you, Steve. I didn't know about the Treaty of Tripoli. Nikki.
Well, Steve is the professor, and he said a lot of what I was going to say, but also I was
Sorry.
going to rebut about the no Catholics, because Rhode Island was actually started as a Catholic colony and had a lot of Catholics in it when it became a state. So
My mistake. Thank you.
And yeah, the British did not consider them Christian, really, and but it's always been that like Jefferson did the Jeffersonian Bible, rather than using the regular Bible, they were enlightened, they were deists. A number of them actually are being adopted by the Unitarians. But they were not considered Christians, the founders, and definitely did not want a Christian nation. They wanted a nation that would accommodate a lot of people.
Great. Thank you. And let's go to Larry.
Okay, I have trouble with having a discussion about American history that begins with the arrival of Europeans. The history of America goes back thousands of years prior to the arrival of Europeans. And I think if history is described in America by those indigenous people, it would be a much different story than we describe of ourselves. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and they had such a variety of different kinds of government. And of course, as you know, the Haudenosaunee Great Law of Peace was a part of an inspiration for our Constitution. Let's go to, I think, next in line is Rob and then Bob.
Okay.
And we should probably go on to the next question.
Okay. Real quick, during the Adams Jefferson election, Jefferson was tarred as being an atheist, which probably helped him win, because there was such a reaction against the New England clergy and their theocracy and the tithes that they demanded that everybody pay to their clergy. And the idea that in Virginia it was the same thing, but it was the Episcopal, the church, that offshoot of the English church. that required that people pay taxes. They didn't want to pay taxes to pay for clergy that they didn't believe in. So Jefferson won in part simply because Americans couldn't agree on what version of Christianity they wanted. But there was no agreement about that, and it was one of the reasons why you get essentially a deistic natural law kind of thing in the Declaration of Independence. The colonies were very divided. Maryland was Catholic, Pennsylvania was run by Quakers, New England was run by a bunch of black-robed people that people were scared of elsewhere in the colonies. So it was a high tension area, and they didn't want to let one denomination dominate. And that's why I believe that's why they said you can't have an official religion, because they were scared of having to get taxed to pay for it.
Oh, that's so disillusioning, Rob. Here I thought there. Bob Simone, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Actually, Rob said some of the same as I was about to say. I wasn't aware that Rhode Island was a Catholic colony. I was raised in Massachusetts, and it was founded by Roger Williams as a freedom for all. But I know Maryland was Mary's land, so that was definitely founded originally as a Catholic colony. So it's pretty much, Rob, what you said. So that's all.
Maybe I misspoke. I'm sorry. Rhode Island was Roger Williams, was definitely Protestant.
Yeah.
And freedom of church.
No, if someone else, the woman before you had said that Rhode Island was founded for Catholics.
Oh, no.
Okay, well then okay, Bob, and then Lorraine, if you could make a quick comment, and then we'll move on to the next question. You're muted, I think.
Thank you. Sorry. It seems pretty clear that the people putting together our first governments were quite concerned about the influence of religion or churches, and wrote it into the Constitution about the separation of church and state. And it give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and then leave the rest out of it. It seems like that part of the Constitution settles the issue to me.
Yeah, I think it does. Let's move on to the next. Thank you, Lorraine. Let's move on to the next question, which I'm just putting in the chat now, but I'll read. So let's think about this more broadly, thinking around the world. What societies have historically had, or maybe today have, some form of religious nationalism? So think about societies around the world today, or that you know from history, where this has really worked. Now, it's not necessarily been Christian. Sometimes it has. And what are the advantages and disadvantages of this kind of blended religious and political system? Yes, Lorraine. Yes, Iran is exhibit number one for this blended. John, please go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You're muted, John. Yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't have any comment.
India has a Modi, and it's leading to Hindu nationalism is leading to the persecution of almost every other religion, including Christians, but
Yes.
mostly Muslims.
Mostly Muslims, yeah, right. Okay, thank you, John and Roy. Go ahead.
Hi, Jerry. Okay, so it's
I
me.
think you're muted, Roy. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think most monarchies depend on a state religion. I think, you think about Japan, most, England history. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Roy. And who's next then? I think
Penny.
Penny.
As I heard your question, part of it was what
Yeah, okay.
what of these cultures are successful?
Well, what societies have been or are today religious nationalists, even though they may or may not be Christian?
Oh,
And
Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Middle East, I don't know. And Japan is not religious in any way, shape, or form. So they don't qualify. But none of them are really supporting their people in a way that's really effective, I think. So anyway.
So it would be a
Okay.
disadvantage that you would see.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, Steve, historical. You're muted, Steve.
Unmute. Okay. Hi. Just a couple of comments. I think reluctantly that Israel under Netanyahu would count as a form of religious nationalism, and I think that the downside is huge. I mean, I'm very in favor of Zionism in connection with Israel. I don't believe that Israel's committing genocide. I'm fairly pro-Israel, but I think that there have been major atrocities throughout the Gazan war, the war against Hamas, and there's talk in Israel right now of not prosecuting Israeli war criminals because they're our soldiers. What an abomination! What a violation of Jewish values. And I'd just like to add, I don't see England and Japan as at all, despite their official connection to religions, or at least England's. I don't think Japan has that connection. I mean, most English people nowadays don't even believe in God. There's a nominal attachment to the Church of England with King Charles as the head. I don't mean to be argumentative. I've been reading a lot about England, and it's so different now than it was even 30, 40, 50 years ago in connection with religion. And I guess I should just stop there.
Right. Maybe I'll have a go at answering that question. I think it was fairly common throughout, let's say, the ancient Near East or South Asia or East Asia for kings to be the high priests or to be closely associated with the high priests. Sargon the Great is famous for installing his many daughters as high priestesses of the goddess, and thus cementing control. So it was certainly, and of course the Inca were very adept at incorporating local religions and making into their big religion and bringing all the gods and idols back to their capital, to Cusco. So I think that this is actually a fairly common way of government of large societies. It's actually unusual to have more tolerance. Many people think that religious tolerance is a modern idea, but in fact, the Edict of Cyrus was one of the first, large-scale declarations of religious tolerance within an empire. And that's of course famously recounted in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah in the Bible. It was very much to the advantage of the Jews, but the Romans also were relatively more religiously tolerant. In fact, the word religion is a Latin word meaning, to describe the kinds of rituals and practices and beliefs that bound a specific ethnic group together. It's related to ligature or tying something together. And so it's not necessary for religion to be the guiding principle, but it's certainly been very common. And it's not been so common that it's worked the way that the Persians and the Romans and the Habsburgs tried to make it work. So Rob, please go ahead.
India, one of the biggest economies in the world, and they are run by a right-wing Hindu organization. Modi has rose to power on Hindutva, the power of Hinduism, and in Sri Lanka you have the opposite. You've got right-wing Buddhists oppressing Hindus. It is highly divisive, and the fights between Pakistan, which is a Muslim country and India, which is the Hindu country, are ongoing, and they have been on the brink of nuclear war from time to time. Trump wants a peace prize for saying that they shouldn't do that. I don't think he deserves it. But so we have two very big entities, but particularly India, which is one of the largest economies in the world.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Mark, if I could,
Okay.
I see we have no one else raise their hands, but in the chat, we do have our member from the Philippines, Reverend Jeremias, and he said it's a predominantly Christian country, and it's actually the only majority Christian nation in Asia. But John, I think it's Shootman, says the Philippines is dominated by the Catholic religion, but there isn't a move to have Catholicism influence government policy except for abortion. So that seems to be the one area where there's a lot of pressure. I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was an interesting part of the chat.
Yes, actually, I was going to suggest, Reverend Jeremias, would you be willing to say a few words? Or are you still? Yes, you're there. Um, would you be willing to say a few words, introduce yourself from the Philippines?
So you have to unmute.
You have to unmute yourself.
Hello everyone. Did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So, is it okay that I will off my video because of my connection?
Yeah, we understand the bandwidth is narrow there.
So, thank you for recognizing me in this Zoom. I really appreciate to be part of this group. And also, I want to share about Christianity about here in the Philippines because this country is predominated by the Christian leaders, and some peoples are Christian. Christianity about it is 90% of the population, and mostly of this is a Roman Catholic. And we are influencing during the Spanish era in 1521, I think, during Magellan here in the Philippines, and introduced the Christianity during this period. And the Catholic Church remained the largest, most influential religion in the country starting those time. And many Filipinos traditions, festivals like Christian moral values come from Catholic teaching. And yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Jeremias. And we're glad you could join us. I'm sure it's not easy right now. But thank you for joining us. And let's turn to the last question. Go ahead. So,
thank you so much.
Great. Glad you could join us there. So the last question is, how can we hold, we have to live with people. Some of us have to live with people who are Christian nationalists or hold Christian nationalist beliefs. So how can we have useful conversations with them about the issues in which we're likely to come into conflict, like school curriculum or books in libraries? How can we do that without, escalating the conflict to 9? Any thoughts about that? Any hands up? Steve, was that a hand up? If you could use the hand up at the react button at the bottom.
Sorry, I lost it for a second. Let's see, where is it? It is there. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, well, I think the question in a way answers itself. Respectful conversations won't escalate conflict, surely. And it's difficult to hold respectful conversations. Maybe that's the real point of the question. But I know people who are really trying hard to interact in respectful ways with basically MAGA folk, who, as we've agreed, include a lot of Christian nationalists. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Great, and Lorraine has put in the chat the name of the group that we had 2 months ago, Braver Angels, who are really trying to mediate and trying to teach people how to manage this conflict. I've actually joined the organization and have been participating in several of their events. And they really do place a premium on civil respectful engagement, but they don't shy away from really serious disagreement. So that might be an organization to look into. Who else has a hand up? I think Rob and Bob yeah. So Bob, let's actually we should be probably wrapping up pretty soon. So Bob, if you could say a few words and then.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to be quick. I was just raised Catholic and consider myself a practicing Christian for many years, and I still try to actually practice Christianity, even though I don't feel that Jesus is the Son of God. So I feel like I can relate to these people very well because I used to believe a lot of the things they believed. And Jesus, he was kind of a rabble rouser. I mean, he was a guy who would go and talk to women at the well, which men weren't supposed to do. He would, hang out with the prostitutes and the people that suffer from leprosy and heal them. So he was not the kind of guy that would hang out with the wealthy and the elite. So he was with the downtrodden, trying to bring them up, praising the peacemakers that they would receive the kingdom of God at the end. So that's kind of how I would talk to them. He wasn't a militant at all. He was a peacemaker, quote some of his Sermon on the Mount, for example. So I'll just leave it at that so other people can say a few words.
Thank you, Bob. Rob, a few words and then
Yeah,
Pat,
my
we'll wrap up.
sister is a Tea Partier, very proud original member, and is supported all of the right-wing candidates. She and I have an agreement. We don't talk about politics at all. We just talk about family. And when we get together once in a while, if we get together for a long time, then we got to talk about politics. So she and I will go off into a different room so we don't inflict it on the rest of the family. And we will talk for a half hour or an hour, and it's fun because we totally disagree with one another on some very fundamental issues. But on other issues, it's strange. We have a lot of agreement too. Same parents after all. But it's a formal agreement. We just don't do it, except for these times when we set it aside and say, "Hey."
Well, thank you, Rob. Yeah, I also have a good friend at the gym with whom I disagree about almost everything in politics, but we have a good time. Okay, Pat and Bob.
Okay, I'll just throw in here that I'm terrible at names. There's a popular psychologist. I was impressed. I don't think I've not studied Braver Angels a lot. I've looked into a little, and of course, there's a lot of expertise out there. But I like what she said about. She said if you're having a disagreement on one level, try to go deeper. And one of her examples was that when you're talking about, taking guns away from people because of the danger, maybe particularly about children being shot at schools, that maybe you can get to the point where you can both agree that we want our children to be safe. Once you can find some ground to work from, and I think a good example of this is when pro-choice people and pro-life people decided they were both interested in having fewer abortions necessary. And there were groups that actually managed to promote better birth control to avoid the abortion issue. So to look for that layer below is a good idea. I also just want to I really can relate to the guy who talked about being raised Catholic, which I was too. And recently I was talking to my brother and we were talking about where we get our values really. And he was emphasizing so much that Christian background and that there are, good things there. And again, just the idea of reaching out to where we can find things in common. Maybe we can't address the Christian nationalists as well as the Christians can. We can support the Christians who are confronting the Christian nationalists and try to be friends and reach out to them. Thanks.
That's a good strategy. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for joining. I think we'll wrap up right now. It's been an engaging session. I think I'd like to invite you also to participate in some other events. Next Sunday, we'll have a discussion of human fallibility, which is quite relevant to, I think, many of these concerns. And that'll be at the Forum Circle. Joanne, do you want to make other announcements? Just for those of you who've registered, Joanne will be sending out some readings. We've actually tried to find some readings that are try to make a case for Christian nationalism. It was very hard, but we tried to find the best we could. And of course, there's many videos and articles trying to argue against it. Joanne, is there anything else that we could announce in the upcoming weeks?
I think you hit the most important ones, the monthly worship service. We do have the book club towards the end of the month.
Oh yeah,
I would
mention
say
when is the monthly worship service?
it's this Saturday.
This Saturday, okay.
So that's coming up really soon. And if you're interested in other events, please take a look at the upcoming events on our webpage, naunitarians.org. That's the best resource. Or if you have signed up for a newsletter, you'll get an update on events twice a month.